The gold standard. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Well, with the increase in the U.S. money supply recently, we've seen the price of gold shoot from $1,200 an ounce to almost $2,000 an ounce. So this brings our attention to what is gold? How do we use it? What is its history? And most importantly, should there be a return to the gold standard? Well, now, Egyptians as early as 4000 BC were minting gold bars with the pharaoh's name on it. The first time we see gold used in coins, however, was with the Chinese in about 1000 BC. See, gold is mentioned 400 times in the Bible. And so my title today is called The Gold Standard. Often when you see that title, it means something is good. See, it's impeccable. It can't be compared. It's better than anything else. But in economics, when we use the term gold standard, what we mean is, should the supply of money be tied to a supply of gold? As a matter of fact, even in the Bible, you have the golden rule. Well, the golden rule is not about gold. But why is it called the golden rule? Because it's so valuable. So see, the term gold gets used for value often. Look, let's return to Adam Smith. Some say the father of modern economics, who wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776. One of the things he said in The Wealth of Nations is, people have a desire to truck and barter. Well, truck means to move, barter means to sell. Later, barter came to mean an exchange of one service for another. I may let my neighbor use the water from my pond in return for mowing my grass. That's a barter. And barters still exist sometimes, but the problem is they're not divisible. I mean, how many gallons of water does he get for how many acres of grass that he's cutting for me? See, it's hard to make them divisible. And that's why things like money come into play. And gold, of course, is a form of money. Look, before there was money, many other things were used. In the Old Testament, you saw dowries that included cattle, right? Other mediums of exchange, cowrie shells. Wampum, actually, were some shells on a string that the Indians used to exchange. During World War II, people used cigarettes for small exchanges, cognac, which was a liquor, for larger exchanges. In history, rice has been used as a means of exchange. Salt has been used. In Munich, at one end of the major Marienplatz there's a Munich salt gate. And the guy who controlled the salt gate charged a fee to get into the trading area, and he charged salt, right? Because salt was used to preserve food before refrigeration. It's where we get the phrase, is that guy worth his salt? What it means, sorry, this is a little bit gross, is he worth the salt that would come from his body if it was decomposed and rendered into salt? Sorry about that. Yeah. Oh, other things that were used before we had exchanging money via gold and other things. Stones were used. Tea was used. You've ever heard the phrase, all the tea in China? Well, tea was used as a means of exchange. Cheese was, and in northern Italy still is, by the way. It's about 300 to 400 euro for a big round of cheese, and it can be used as money. Well, a little bit hard to carry around, but that is the problem with many other means of exchange. And what is the benefit of then things like gold and then coins and then the paper currency we have today, and even more convenient, electronic, right? Another example, during Jesus' time, a person was paid a shekel of wheat a day for his labor. Well, a shekel was a certain amount of wheat. And so now the Israeli currency is called the Israeli shekel, and that's where it came from. In early colonial times in the United States, one of the most common currencies was a Spanish currency called the peso de ocho. Why so many South American and Central American countries now their currency is called the peso? It derives from the peso de ocho, the piece of 8, that was a very popular coin during colonial times. So you've heard the story, of course, that some Dutch guys bought the island of Manhattan, from the Manhattan Indians, by the way, for $24 worth of beads. Now that'd be about $1,200 in 1626. There's problems with that exchange. The Dutch believed in private property. The Indians did not. So parties on both sides of the exchange had a severe disagreement about what that meant, but they couldn't speak each other's language well enough to know what was going on. That's a whole nother, by the way, a whole nother podcast about the idea of private property and why America didn't develop until the Europeans came. It developed because of private property, whole nother subject. But anyway, we see that happening in the exchange of Manhattan for $24 worth of beads. Okay, so, and then today's electronic currency, and also Bitcoin, another subject for a whole nother podcast some other time. I'm just trying to give you some history for what's going on here. Look, as Adam Smith said, people want to make exchanges. Money helps them make that exchange. Look, 1 Timothy 6:10 says, the love of money is the root of all evil. The key word is love. There's nothing wrong with money. There's something wrong with loving money. And in both economics and finance, money is defined as a means of exchange. Well, now the scripture from 1 Timothy makes a whole lot of sense. Why would you love the means of exchange? That makes no sense. It only has value because you can exchange it for something else. You love the end. You don't love the means. That would be ridiculous to love the means. But people do. See, and so in general, savings advice here, as long as you're saving money that has an end, you're not violating, you're not loving the money. But it's when you start loving the money that you find the root of all evil. But my message today is trying to get to the gold standard. So let's see if we can move forward to that. So purposes of money, it has four purposes. Medium of exchange, the one I just talked about. It needs to have a store of value, a unit of account, and have future value. Gold is all four of these. I already said you can exchange it from one thing to another, and you can divide, the unit of account is the third one. You can divide gold, right? It also has a store of value. It will keep its value, and it has future value. So that's why gold is such an attractive means of exchange, right? Oh, in high school, did you do the cheer 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits, $1? Do you know what that means? What it meant in colonial days, there wasn't enough coinage, so they would cut the coin into 8 bits. 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bits. The end of the cheer is 8 bits, meaning you would cut it into 8 bits so that would be a bit of $1, and if you cut it carefully, you could get 9. There you go. Not a good thing to do, but people did it, yeah. So gold is all four of these things, and that's why it's so popular in history. Well, Isaac Newton, yeah, that guy, the same Isaac Newton. The gravity guy, the physics guy, believe it or not, the last 30 years of his life, he was the master of the England Mint. And it was him in 1717, it was Isaac Newton who declared a relationship between the prices of gold and silver. To make it even more interesting, he got the job through his friend John Locke. Now life gets really interesting, doesn't he? But anyway, if we go out to 1717 to find this history of the gold being measured, but we really get the first gold standard in England in 1816. Meaning, if you have a certain amount of gold in storage, you can print currency relative to that. And so that's what the gold standard means to us as economists, right? We come forward to Bretton Woods Agreement in New Hampshire at the end of World War II. We were clear at that point that the Allies were going to win. People were saying, what kind of an exchange system are we going to have going forward? 44 countries, representing the Allies and many others, met at a ski resort in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. And in 1944, they established the International Monetary Fund, they established the World Bank, and more importantly, the most important thing to come out of Bretton Woods, the United States stood up and said, we will guarantee that we will always buy gold at $35 an ounce. Okay, this set a reliable system for the world to trade goods and services after the war because the U.S. would always buy gold for $35 an ounce. This started in 1944. Now, this ended on August 15, 1971, when Richard Nixon closed the gold window. What that meant was the U.S. would no longer exchange U.S. dollars for $35 for an ounce of gold, back or forth, either way. The U.S. would do it either way, right? And so now our money is what's called fiat money. Fiat is a Latin term that means as the king as the king declares. The king saying, let it be. That's what fiat means, let it be. And so the king determines this currency, these paper currency you carry around in your purse and your wallet, they are fiat money. And the question for us as a Christian economist is, should we make a return to the gold standard? Let me give just a brief explanation, a metaphor I've used in class many times that I think helps us understand this. Let's say we've got 4 students living in an apartment on the campus at Dallas Baptist University. They want to go on a ski trip in March, spring break, right? One of the 4 kids is rich. The other 3 don't have much money. So the 3 poor kids say to the rich kid, if you'll loan us the $600 to make the ski trip, we'll pay you back $200 in April, May, and June. By the time we leave here, we'll have it all paid back. So the rich kid says, fine, we'll do it. We'll go on the ski trip. He loans each of the poor kids $600. They make the ski trip. They pay him back. They say their goodbyes in June, and everything's fine. That's the metaphor for the U.S. being the rich kid in 1944. We move forward to 1971 in our little story and go back to this rich kid, and let's say it's 4 years after they graduate. These 3 poor kids come to the rich kid and say, oh, now we've all gotten married and we want to buy a house. Can you finance our house? And the rich kid said, there's no way I can finance 3 houses. That's exactly what the U.S. said in 1971. They said, in 1944, all you other countries were poor and we could finance you. But by 1971, the other countries had grown up and the U.S. could not support the weight of guaranteeing the entire global financial system. And in that little metaphor, you get a good example of what happened. The U.S. couldn't sustain this anymore. The other economies had grown far too large, as those students had grown large, and they wanted to buy bigger things, and so we just couldn't do it. So should we return to the gold standard? Well, in biblical economic policy, which I've written with my friend Sergei Seidamatov, we say that there's 10 commandments of economics. Let's look at a couple of these quickly here. The one is honest measures. We say that the Bible tells us that we should have honest measures. That is a vote for the gold standard because there is a controlled amount of gold. And fiat money does not have a control. The money supply is controlled by the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, and they can print as much as they want. So as a Christian, we should be concerned about the honest measures, and that would be a vote for the gold standard. Gold is both a commodity and a currency, but in this sense, we're talking about it in terms of currency. Should gold control how much U.S. currency is out there? Also, in that book, Biblical Economic Policy, one of the 10 commandments we find is don't steal. Well, printing more money causes inflation. That devalues the money that people hold, and you could consider that stealing. And the problem with that is this inflationary spiral harms the poor more than the rich, because the poor have to buy milk and diapers on the daily market, while the rich can move their holdings into things like gold and real estate and stocks that move up with inflation. The third thing we find of those 10 commandments is trade is good. Well, gold enables countries to trade. And so as a Christian economist, we would say gold is good because it enables these countries to trade. But if we reach a conclusion, perhaps the most important of the 10 commandments is caring for widows and orphans. And if we return to the gold standard, it would reduce the U.S. dollar holdings so low. Matter of fact, it would reduce the number of dollars so low that it would hurt the poor. And I think that overcomes all these other good things it would do. In a great sense, that ship has already sailed. We've gone off the gold standard. It would be very, very difficult to go back on it. And if we went back on it, it seems to me that it would be hardest on the poor, as I said, who have to buy things on a daily basis. So I think we should not return to the gold standard. I mean, sometimes it looks very tempting, but we probably should not do it. If anything, the money supply should be controlled by the amount of productivity in the United States, but that's a subject for another podcast. There you go, the gold standard. Probably not. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist, where our slogan is, fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time.